a radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, September 10th. I hope you're having a great week. As you can see, still in Barcelona. I apologize for yesterday's show that abruptly ended. I think I continued talking for about another 10 minutes afterwards. If you're interested in what I have to say, it's on the audio podcast. You can hear it there. That continued to record, I believe. Sadly, the internet just collapsed. It just died on me right at that point, and I didn't even notice. So I kept on talking. So apologize for that. All the super chat questions from yesterday were saved. I have them, so we will cover them today. So don't worry about me missing one of your questions. We will get to them. We will cover all those super chat questions. And of course, please continue to submit questions for today's show. Let me let's see. I'm just looking at this. Yes, let me just say I don't know what the internet situation is right now, so I don't know how stable it is. For a while it was fine. For a few weeks it was fine, and then the last couple of days it's been giving me problems. So I hope we can get through a whole show today without interrupting, but we might not. It is really out of my control. If it does drop today, I will start a new stream. I'll be more conscious of monitoring to make sure that we are streaming live. Please, if it does drop, maybe somebody in all caps say, you're gone, you're frozen, or whatever, and hopefully I can see that. I'd appreciate it on the chat. I do glance at that, so I will have an opportunity to see it. So let's hope we can get through everything, but it would be great if we could get through a show. And we'll go for as long as we need to today to cover all the questions that we're getting today and all the questions that we got yesterday. So I will answer all questions received. Okay, let's get started. We'll start with some humor, or not, as the case may be. Maybe it's not that funny. But yesterday, there was a Facebook post. That basically claimed claimed it was from a resident of Springfield, Ohio, from a local resident who warns, the post warns, that the author of this Facebook post's neighbor's daughter, the author's neighbor's daughter's friend, I'll say it again, the author's neighbor's daughter's friend had discovered that her neighbors, Haitian immigrants, were trying to eat her cat. She also claimed, this time crediting the Rangers and the police, that similar fates were befalling ducks and geese at the local park. In other words, Haitian immigrants, and there were a lot of Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, were eating people's pets and even eating the ducks and geese at the local park. This message was clipped, screenshot, and then shared everywhere. All over social media, all over Facebook, all over X, all over Twitter. It became, a panic. A number of people started commenting on this. It was picked up by people, of course, on the right. Immigrants eating pets. It just blew up. In addition, somebody made a AI-generated image of Trump defending baby animals from barbarous invaders. You can imagine Trump heroically defending the little baby cats and baby dogs and whatever, ducks, geese, whatever. And this AI-generated image exploded all over the web as you know, see, this is what happens when you let immigrants, they start eating your pets. I mean, Trump is protecting ducks and kitties. I mean, he can't lose this election. I mean, he's obviously going to win it. Now, the problem is that you can look, but there's no evidence that any of this happened. There's no evidence that any immigrant is eating cats. Indeed, there was a woman in Columbus, Ohio, I think, that was caught eating a cat, but she wasn't an immigrant. There are other photos of somebody taking a duck or a goose from the local park in Columbus, Ohio, which is not that far from Springfield. Again, not clear that it's an immigrant. According to local police, there are no reports of pets being stolen and eaten, or stolen at all. And no evidence of the ducks and geese disappearing. J.D. Vance, of course, jumped in on this. He said, quote, "Months ago, I raised the issue of Haitian illegal immigrants draining social services and generally causing chaos all over Springfield, Ohio. I commented at the time and did a little research, and it turns out Springfield, Ohio became a magnet for immigrants because Springfield, Ohio was generating more jobs than they could fill. There was a massive labor shortage in Springfield, Ohio, that caused them to encourage immigrants. Indeed, the city was encouraging immigrants to come to Springfield to fill the jobs. And Springfield local businesses were benefiting enormously from the influx of immigrants who were working at the jobs that were filled. Now, since then, it could be that this created a certain buzz around immigrants, and some immigrants have come there and have not found jobs, or maybe illegal immigrants have come there, it's not clear, or asylum seekers who it takes a long time for them to get work permits, but who would love to work and where their jobs are in Springfield. So I'm not saying there's no situation in Springfield, there might be, but it's not like immigrants have just invaded this place. It's that this place had jobs, they were looking for people, and they invited the immigrants in, and they benefit from it. Anyway, J.D. Vance continues. Reports now show that people have their pets abducted and eaten by people who shouldn't be in this country. Where is our border czar? So let's blame the non-existent abduction of pets and eating of pets on Kamala Harris. I mean, why not? What the hell? Truth is irrelevant when it comes to political campaigns. And why not vilify a bunch of immigrants and make them look like barbarians? It serves multiple purposes for the right, serves multiple purposes for the campaign. So again, Haitian immigrants are not, most of the Haitian immigrants in Springfield are not there illegally. The city, if you go to the city's website, you can find an explanation of that. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, they'll use any excuse, including false stories, to vilify immigrants, to make a big deal out of an issue that is not even real, just in order to win some points with an electorate that seems massively terrified of immigrants. The number one issue on most people's minds, I think on some surveys higher than inflation, is immigration. Why? What is it the immigrants are doing to you? 90% of Americans don't even interact with immigrants. it has no impact on their lives, and yet this is the number one issue affecting everybody's lives. Yeah. Eating cats. That's where we are today. Fake news all over the place. I wonder what the authorities are going to do about the fake news that is going on. I wonder if eating cats is going to come up in the debate tonight. So as you probably all know, because it's broadcast everywhere, the Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are going to be debating tonight. What exactly are they going to be debating? And what exactly are they going to actually say? What values are going to be? I mean, really, the only value of this debate is to see how they handle each other. Can Kamala stand up to Trump? Can she? It's all about personality. The one thing that won't be discussed today are real issues. The things that won't be discussed today are real solutions. The real things that won't be discussed are the real problems that this country faces. None of that will be discussed. I mean, it might be raised in a question, but you can guarantee that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will not respond to those questions. This is all a personality contest. One writer said that the key to tonight is who can convince the American people that if they get elected, they won't destroy America. Because both parties are saying, Trump is basically saying, if Kamala's elected, America's over. It's finished. It's history. It's gone. We won't survive. And the Democrats are saying, if Donald Trump's getting elected, it's over. It's finished. America won't survive. This is the last election you'll vote in. It's all gone. And I think a lot of the American people are skeptical about both those claims, but partisans on both sides are committed to them. And maybe what you need to convince the American people tonight, if you're Donald Trump or you're Kamala, is no, the country will survive me. Although I doubt that is on their minds, and I doubt that'll be the strategy. It's going to be, I don't know. I guess it's going to be interesting. It's going to be horrible. At least it won't be a complete embarrassment like Biden was. I think Kamala will do a lot better than Biden. At least that. But whether she can actually change anybody's minds, I mean, the only way she can do that, and then it'll be interesting to see how she plays this, because she hasn't been successful so far. For Kamala to win, and right now the polls basically show it being a toss-up, right? It's a complete tie. It's a tie in the popular vote. It's a tie in every one of the battlefield states. If you believe that the polls are still biased against Trump, then maybe that tie suggests he has an advantage. But certainly it does not look like Kamala is going to run away with it like some people were projecting just a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It does not look like it's going to be a slam dunk either way, like it looked like it was going to be for Trump when Biden was running. It looks like this will come down to the last votes in those 7 swing states, and that this election will be decided by a few tens of thousands of people, probably independents, maybe moderate Republicans, who decide whether they're going to vote for Trump or whether they're going to vote for Kamala. They're going to vote against Trump, because I think that'll be their primary. And the question is, what would get them to vote one way or the other? What would get them to go in one direction or the other? It's not going to be a policy issue. Nobody cares about policy. The voters don't seem to care about policy. It's not going to be anything particular. So what does Kamala have to do to convince Americans that she should be elected? I think it's simple. It's easy. And she could do it. She could do it early in the debate, and she could do it powerfully and strongly, and I think it would be a winning strategy. And that is to convince Americans that she is a centrist, that she repudiates her own legislative agenda from when she was a senator. In 2019, when she ran for president, when she ran in the Democratic primaries, she ran as a representative of the crazy left. Americans would not elect that Kamala Harris for president of the United States. If she is going to win this election, she has to convince the American people that she is to the right of Biden, that she's a centrist through and through. In order to do that, she is going to come out and say, look, I have now been vice president for 3.5 years. I understand a lot more about how this government runs and how this country runs. And it's clear to me that to govern this country, I must govern from the center. That some of the policies that I had back then, for example, my opposition to fracking, was a mistake. This country needs energy and therefore must frack, which she has said she has changed her mind on fracking, but she needs to make it explicit. And she needs to maybe take one or two other positions she had back then and say, I no longer hold these positions. I am now committed to XYZ, whatever she believes the center is. I think that's her strategy. Should be her strategy. I don't think it will be. I don't think she's brave enough. I don't think anybody in the campaign is brave enough to do something like that, but that should be the strategy. And I think she wins if she does that. Trump's strategy is different. And I don't know if it's possible for him to execute. Publius says, Yaron, you are a dreamer. I can dream. Let me dream. What the hell? Trump's strategy is to come across as sane. And, I mean, again, if he wants to win, and if he's rational, which I think he wants to win, but I don't think he's rational, it's to come across as sane and positive and inspiring in his pro-Americanism or something. Yeah, I mean, he could talk about the evil of the border, and he can talk about the evil of inflation and say stupid things about both things, because that's what he does. He says stupid things about both the border and primarily about inflation, which he has no concept of what it means. But if he can stop whining about the 2020 election, which he doesn't seem to be able to, at least not in his tweets, if he can present himself as, sane and reasonable in some way, then I think he has a chance of really taking the lead after this debate. It really is a toss-up. Either one of them could score major progress in this particular debate that moves them forward, that takes them and gives them the win. It's not going to take much. It's about convincing a few tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 people, either to switch where they are today or to go out and vote for you. And that should be doable for both of them. They just have to come up with the kind of right strategy. I mean, they're both gonna talk about taxes. Kamala Harris will talk about raising taxes, but not raising taxes on the middle class. She's going to accuse Trump of raising taxes on the middle class with his tariffs, which is absolutely a legitimate criticism because it's absolutely true. And if she's smart, she hammers him on tariffs. I mean, hammers him on it. Now, of course, she might be coming at it from a weak position, given that Biden has basically kept all of Trump's tariffs. But Trump's new proposals on tariffs, what is the technical term? They're completely wacky. They're insane. And unbelievably destructive to the U.S. economy. And she could just hammer him on tariffs. That I think would at least get him upset. And I think that's what she needs to do. She needs to trigger him so that he shows his true self, which is an unhinged Trump. She needs to, if I were her, I would have a few things there about Trump being a loser. Remember, I suggested that to the Republicans in the primaries. They never did it, of going after him as a loser. I would definitely, if I were Harris, I would go after Trump. He's a loser. And he's a whiny loser. He's a bad loser. He's a loser that can't accept defeat. And I would go after him on tariffs, that Americans pay tariffs, and every economist in the world agrees on this. And Trump is lying and deceiving the American people by pretending and deluding them into thinking that foreigners pay for these tariffs. Those are the lines that she needs to take. She needs to be tough with him and assertive. And she needs to, cause him to go unhinged. And that's possible. That's very possible to happen. I mean, there were moments, even the debate with Biden, when Trump was a little unhinged. And Biden was not saying anything, intelligible at least. Kamala Harris has finally published an issues page on her website. So now we have an actual agenda. It's a typical politician's agenda, so it's kind of meaningless. And it's got mostly things that we know: tax cuts for the middle class, subsidies for first-time home buyers, federal ban on corporate price gouging, whatever the hell that is, for food and groceries, and a bunch of other things that's supposed to rebuke a Project 2025. She'll try to latch 2025 onto Trump. I don't think that's going to work. Nobody knows what 2025 is. It worked a few weeks ago. Enough, move on to something different. So nothing really exciting on an issues page. But at least she can now say, I'm not contentless, as people were claiming she was. So that's a debate. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. I'm not going to watch it live because it'll be early morning here in Barcelona, and I certainly will not be waiting up in order to watch it. If I were, I think that I don't know what's going to happen with the abortion topic. We'll see. I mean, maybe Trump will be asked some kind of cornering, some questions about abortion to corner him, where they try to corner him because he's obviously come out with very relatively liberal views on abortion. That has alienated his base. It's caused him to have to change his mind or overturn something he said from one day to the next about abortion because the base was so alienated by what he said. Those inconsistencies are something that can be brought out. It'll be interesting to see how foreign policy plays into this. And again, it's hard to... Kamala, unfortunately for her, rambles. So if she can become a prosecutor for this debate and give short, succinct, powerful, strong, emotional, evocative answers, again, I think she has a chance of winning. But, it's hard to tell how these things go. And it's impossible to tell how the American people understand these things and what they get or don't get out of it, right? Over the past month, Trump has been, he's just he's just nuts. He shared a post on his Truth or Twitter calling for former President Barack Obama to be subject to a military tribunal. He's reposted fake images of well-known Democrats clad in prison grab. He's threatened Mark Zuckerberg with a life sentence for helping state and local governments fund elections in 2020, just a political contribution. But he's going to put Mark Zuckerberg in jail. He has basically said that if anybody is caught cheating in this election, if there's any election manipulation, if there's anything, that people are going to go to jail for life. They're going to go to jail for a long, long time. They're going to, really go after them. When I win, those people that cheated will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences, so that this depravity of justice does not happen again. In other words, he's saying, I'm coming after you guys. I don't know to what extent this is going to intimidate, particularly if it's a close election, or if this intimidates election officials all over the place. He's completely unhinged. He's completely unhinged. He wants police officers to watch for voter fraud at the polling places because voters are afraid of that badge and they might not commit fraud if you're there. He's threatening people left and right and using bloodier and bloodier, more violent terminology over time. I mean, he's becoming more and more and more unhinged over time. And I think the scariest thing about this election is that it is close and that Trump just does not accept that he's lost. Does not accept it. And a lot of the people in places like Georgia who manage the election process this time around are Trump people. The same in, I think, Wisconsin and Michigan. It could very well be that this time, whereas last time election officials had integrity and basically went with the facts and refused to change their minds and refused to do illegal things at Trump's behest, this time nobody's going to stop it because the people in these different election committees in swing states are all beholden to Trump. So this election could be very, very ugly. It could go to the Supreme Court. Wouldn't be surprised if this was a close election, if ultimately the Supreme Court had to decide it. There could be violence. There could be violence from either side. The left pissed off if Trump somehow wins on a small margin. The right pissed off if the left somehow wins in a small margin. This election is maybe the most unpredictable election I can remember in terms of the outcome, not of who actually gets elected. I think it's a toss-up, but on whether the election is acceptable and kind of what the results are, how it plays out. I can't think of an election where in advance we know that this is going to be a real disaster. Again, Trump already intimidating people. It'll be interesting to see if Trump gets asked in the debate about federal spending and budget deficit. It's important to note, and I know many of you don't like hearing this, but it's important to note that federal spending increased by more during Trump's 3.5 years, so pre-COVID. So before COVID, the 3.5 years of Trump's presidency, the federal spending increased more than it did during 8 years of Obama. So it's a real good question about who's really responsible for inflation and the debts and all that stuff. You can blame it on Biden, but certainly Trump has some responsibility for it. Okay, anyway, it's going to be an interesting debate. We'll talk about it tomorrow. I'll watch it after the fact, read up about it, and comment on it. So I'm interested in what you guys think if you're going to watch it live. But it's going to be ugly and uninteresting in some regards and fascinating in other regards. This all got messed up. All right. Let's talk a minute about Europe. We've talked about this quite a bit over the last couple of years, particularly more recently in that Germany is in a recession and European economy is struggling, and there's very little tech in Europe, very little tech entrepreneurship in Europe, and Europe is falling behind. If you look at, let me see if I can find these stats. I had some interesting stats here. Yeah, I mean, basically the United States, by every measure, is dramatically outperforming Europe since the great financial crisis. So over the last 15 years, the United States stock market, US GDP, US GDP per capita, income, wealth, by every parameter, individual Americans and the American economy in aggregate are performing way better, dramatically better than Europe, right? And a big part of that, obviously, is that the United States has Silicon Valley, and it has entrepreneurship, and it has new companies being born, and it has innovation happening. And Europe is lagging. Europe is dramatically lagging behind in tech and in innovation and in anything new, in biotech and in everything. And its GDP is hurting, and it's basically been stagnating for 15 years. Nothing has gotten better. I mean, except in countries like Greece, which fell off a cliff and have recovered quite nicely. But that's an exception. The European Union as a whole has done pretty badly. Again, some Eastern European countries like Poland, Lithuania, Czech Republic, Slovenia have done very well. But again, exceptions. Western Europe, flat. 15 years, barely any growth. Anyway, they appointed a commission. That's what you do, right? You appoint a commission to figure out what's going on. And, the commission was headed by Mario Draghi, who is the former president of the European Central Bank, and I think he was even prime minister of Italy for a while. Anyway, Draghi came back yesterday, with his report. And basically said, look, Europe can compete. It's losing. It's way behind on investment. It's way behind on tech. It's way behind on innovation and all these parameters. The European Union needs to get its act together. Energy prices are through the roof, primarily because cheap Russian gas is no longer available, and because the Germans shut down their nuclear power. And yet, all these countries are committed to going to net zero, whatever that means. And so his report basically says, look, you can't do this unless there are dramatic changes at the EU level. And that means a significant reduction in regulation and massive public investment. Now, I think public investment is a huge mistake, but he's talking about investing $900 billion a year in sectors like technology and defense. So his solution is half good, deregulate, and half bad, increase public spending. If Europe was really serious about this, if Europe really was committed to competing with the United States and China in terms of technological leadership and innovation, I mean, Europeans are educated. They have the potential, the knowledge. There have been periods in European history where they've been incredibly entrepreneurial. They can produce, they can create, they can build. They've shown that in the post-World War II period. They showed that in the 19th century with the amount of innovation and economic growth that was going on in Europe at the time. What the European Union needs to do is get out of the way. What they need to do is find ways to stop. They need to just not find ways, they just need to stop getting in the way of entrepreneurs. They need to, again, deregulate, reduce taxes. I don't think the European Union taxes, but it can make recommendations to its members. And just create an environment as friendly to entrepreneurs, to innovation, to business, to progress, to creation, to building, to making as possible. They have done the opposite for 20 years now. They have built a massive bureaucracy that makes it more and more and more has made it more and more and more difficult to start a business, to innovate, to build, to construct. And then they need to embrace the fact that they're going to be dependent on fossil fuels for a long time and build even more LNG terminals all over Europe so that they can import natural gas in the United States and the Middle East and wherever to drive down the cost of energy. Natural gas is incredibly cheap, even transported on a boat through LNG. It is incredibly cheap. And start, as the French have already, starting a campaign of building next generation nuclear power plants. France is on that track of building nuclear power plants. It could be in a position in a few years to provide energy to the rest of Europe. Scandinavia is building nuclear power plants. Germany is holding out. But that's what they need. They need to abandon all this money going to, again, what do you call it, solar panels in Germany, which is funny. And, you can understand solar panels in Spain, particularly southern Spain, where it's sunny almost all the time. Solar panels in Germany doesn't make any sense. Windmills, and invest in what's cheap, and ultimately invest in the cleanest energy available, which is nuclear power. And I think pretty easily to say, the safest. Next generation nuclear power will probably be by far the safest source of energy possible. So reduce the cost of energy and deregulate. Those are the two things that Europe needs. Now, they do have one other problem, and I'm not sure how you solve this. This is more of a philosophical problem, more of a sense of life problem, more of a spiritual problem that they're going to be challenged. And that is, how do you change the mentality of Europeans? Too many Europeans are unambitious. The spirit of entrepreneurship, the spirit of going out and making something of your life, of building, of creating, of that, it just is diminished in Europe. They're much more focused on how many vacation days they can squeeze into a year, and how much time they can get off, and life-work balance, but where the balance is way away from work. Now, some of that is going to hit them ultimately when some of their governments suddenly discover that they can't afford to pay for all this time off. They can't afford to pay for all the pensions. They can't afford to pay for the early retirements. They can't afford to pay for all this health care. But some of that they might want to start thinking about, how do you change the mentality of young people? How do you get them to be more ambitious? How do you make them less reliant on a pretty efficient welfare state relative to America? It's very efficient welfare state. That's going to be a challenge. So throwing $900 billion a year into sectors like technology and defense, I understand defense. They need to make the investment in defense because of Russia. But technology, I think, would be a massive mistake and a waste of money, and reinforces the central planning mentality the Europeans have too much of already. What they really need is to create an environment in which private capital, venture capital, wants to come and invest in European companies. And most venture capital doesn't want to invest in European companies. And even the European companies that are successful, there's so many regulations and constraints that it's very hard to become a big company in Europe, a big tech company in Europe. Europe presents barriers to American tech companies in Europe, never mind to its own companies. All right, so the druggy report was published yesterday. I think the only impact it's probably going to have is to get European Union committed to subsidizing and in quote investing, pretend investing, even more than they are right now, which is wasteful, and it probably will lead to even more stagnation. Good news. Good news these days when it comes to economics and when it comes to politics only comes from one country, basically. One country. And that's Argentina. Because in Argentina, you actually have a president who has a clue, more than a clue, as an understanding of economics, and is actually trying to run the country to the best, I think, of his ability, or to the best of what his parliament will let him do, in order to improve the livelihood, the standard of living, the quality of life of the people of Argentina. Some good news out of Argentina. It turns out that Argentinians are taking the dollars they have out of the mattress. So Argentinians over the last few years have been converting their pesos into dollars on the black market. So horrible rate, much different than the official rate, but they can't convert a lot of pesos into dollars by the official rate. So they do it in the black market. And they've been putting it in the mattress. They have been taking it out of circulation, and they have basically been encouraging this massive black market to exist. So they keep it in the mattress. In the mattress, that money does not create any economic activity. And indeed, it takes dollars out of circulation at a time when dollars are needed in Argentina in order to import things from other countries where you use dollars. So it seems that Argentinians have become so confident in Javier Milei and his policies, and he's also promised a tax amnesty for people who bring the money out of the mattress, that they're actually taking it out and depositing the money in banks, in dollar-denominated accounts in the bank. Dollar deposits have surged 40% since Milei took office. They now sit at close to $20 billion. This is the highest level they've been at since late 2019. So in the meantime, Argentinians are still paid in pesos, but they can open a bank saving account at a bank in dollars. More and more are doing so, but more importantly, they're taking those dollars out of the mattress and putting them in the bank. That means they trust the banks. They trust the government not to confiscate their dollars. They trust the government not to tax these dollars that have suddenly showed up from the black market. This is one more step in the process of Argentina doing away with all capital controls, which is crucial for its economic health. That is one more step to getting the Argentinian economy closer to what Milei promised, which is dollarization, which would completely revolutionize the economy, put it on a dollar, get rid of the central bank, and I think put Argentina on a path that could potentially make it a really, really strong, powerful economy, particularly if Milei can continue the deregulation, continue the shrinkage of government spending, and everything else that he's done. So tax amnesty expires September 30th. So people have until September 30th to take the money in the mattress, put it in the bank. I expect that to spike even further. I'm sure a lot of people will keep some money in the mattress, because you never know. And that's probably good policy in Argentina. I mean, who knows what will happen with Milei, to Milei. So you want to have some cash. But it's great to see the confidence they have in him, in his programs, and their confidence in the future of the Argentine economy, which I think this represents. It represents that confidence. So, it's going to be interesting. I mean, basically, from the moment Milei took office, dollar deposits in banks have been going up. Just one more sign that the Argentinian population is supportive of Milei's agenda, and that he's doing the right thing. All right. Let's see. Oh, one thing it looks like both Trump and Kamala will agree on tonight, if it ever comes up, probably won't. They both agree that a Japanese company, Nippon, should not be allowed to buy U.S. steel. Why? Nobody can explain exactly. U.S. steel should be owned by the U.S. It's in the name, after all. Japanese owning U.S. steel, it's strategically bad. It's a national defense issue. Biden administration literally is going to block the deal. I don't know what excuse they're going to use, but the government can stop a merger, and they're going to stop Nippon Steel from buying U.S. steel, which is not good for U.S. workers. It's not good for U.S. steel. It's not good for anybody. It's just they're playing to, I don't know, some xenophobic something that voters might, I don't know. It makes zero sense. The Democrats maybe are responding to the union, the steelworkers union, that might be worried about I don't know, losing jobs, but they're much more likely to lose jobs if U.S. Steel stays an American company than if they bring the efficiencies, the increased productivity, the increased markets that Nippon Steel provides for them. But this is the world in which we live. We live in populist economic world. Populist economics is anti-economics. It's a negation of economic arguments. It's a negation of actual economics, of actually looking at income, expenses, balance sheets, all of that. And it's about intervention. It's about intervention in the, quote, national interest. It's about nationalism, both on the left and on the right. It's about protecting, quote, protecting workers, even though it doesn't protect workers, but it sounds like it's protecting workers. It's from the same origin as tariffs. It's one big lie. But Nippon Steel is paying shareholders of U.S. Steel a nice premium. And no American company would pay them this premium. Basically, the government is screwing U.S. Steel shareholders. I wonder if U.S. Steel can sue. Probably not. The government for destroying their wealth. Anyway, Biden administration looks like it's going to kill the deal. Trump completely supports that, has spoken up about it. He's vying for the union vote as well. It's just despicable. I mean, the one thing you know in the debate today will not be represented. Nobody will say anything about this point of view will not be brought out. Is any semblance of free markets, any semblance of market economics, of capitalism, of not even capitalism, just a little bit of freedom in the economic realm, that is dead. There's nobody standing for that. Nobody that actually advocates for economic liberty anymore on the American political scene. And that is definitely true of these two. So the one thing is you'll see a competition between the two of them to give away as many goodies as possible and to pretend that there are no economic problems. There's no debt problem. They'll be spending government money left and right, both of them. There are no issues. And there's certainly no market solutions to anything. All right, let's see. A few more quick stories. All right, yeah, okay, Google. Yesterday was the first day of the new Google antitrust lawsuit. You know that Google lost the first lawsuit, the lawsuit that claimed that it was a search monopoly. It is lost, and now we're waiting for the judge to decide on a remedy, and of course, waiting probably for an appeal by Google. We'll see how that plays out. But they lost the first account. They are now declared monopoly on search, and there are a bunch of remedies that the court is looking at, including breaking Google up. Well, yesterday, another lawsuit started, and this is a lawsuit claiming that Google holds a monopoly over advertising, over online advertising. It certainly has a large market share of a particular sliver of online marketing, online advertising. if it loses this one, which I think is very likely, then it's going to be hard to imagine how Google survives. Now, I know a lot of people hate Google for a variety of different reasons, and there are lots of reasons to dislike Google, given the political correctness, given the stupidity of the AI that they launched, and given that sometimes the search results are just not helpful. And clearly, when it comes to politics, many of the search results are biased. But the reality is that Google is a great company. This is a company that was built by a couple of Stanford students, basically in the garage, not exactly, but basically in a garage, in the late 1990s. It was one of many search engines, one of many companies competing to provide search functionality. It clearly won that battle to the point where it dominated, not because it had some special market power, not because it could bring to bear, any massive amounts of money or anything like that. It won because it provided a better product, a better service. Its search engine was just more effective and better. And if you don't believe me, just try running a search on Bing and compare it to a search on Google. And Google's just, from all the searches I've done, always been better. This is a company that figured out how to monetize search with advertising, invested heavily in the technology of advertising, in efficient advertising, and has done phenomenally well in that. They have never stopped improving their search, invested heavily in AI, invested in a lot of different things, including self-driving cars. We'll get to self-driving cars in a minute, and other technologies that we'll all benefit from ultimately. It was from all indications, it was a fun company to work for. It might be a company already in the decline in a sense that it's going to face competition primarily from AI, which means both its search is unsafe and its advertising model unsafe because AI will replace it all. I use Chrome browser, which is a Google product. And yet the government is going to step in and decree that a company that provides all of us with a product for free is a monopoly and should be broken up, should be destroyed, should be changed, not on the basis of the marketplace, not on the basis of individual decisions in the marketplace, but on the basis of bureaucratic fiat, on the basis of authoritarian dictate, on the basis of a fascist economic system where some elites, some central planners in charge get to dictate which companies survive and which die, which are broken up, which mergers can go through, which can't. Nippon Steel can't do that one. And again, this is like Nippon Steel. This is a bipartisan issue. The first lawsuit against Google was brought by the Trump Justice Department. So Trump was responsible for the first lawsuit. This lawsuit is all on Biden, but it doesn't matter. It's not like Trump or Republicans disagree with this lawsuit. They support it 100%. Today, there is, I've said this many times, I'll say it many, many, many times, unfortunately, there is no political party today that stands for even a semblance, even an iota of freedom in the marketplace. They're both statist, they're both interventionist, they're both central planners. They want to dictate our lives and run our economy for us. We know how that ends. That does not end well. But, this Google antitrust case is going to be interesting to keep track of, to watch, and to see how it lands up. All right, Telegram. So we all know about the founder of Telegram being arrested in France. We talked about this. Accused of the fact that the platform was being used by bad guys, and that Telegram had refused to basically respond to police inquiries, to law enforcement inquiries about illegal transactions, illegal things being communicated, and illegal things like child pornography being exchanged on the platform. As we know, the founder of Telegram, who was arrested, has been released in France on bail, is waiting a trial. In the meantime, it turns out that Telegram is changing its policies, its moderation policies. It's actually going out there and improving the transparency of the platform, improving moderation of the platform. So, for example, they're going to implement a bunch of changes over the next year. Some of those changes appear already being taken. For example, the company FAQ page has changed just in the last couple of days. One section, for example, that was titled, "There's illegal content on Telegram. How do I take it down?" Initially, Telegram response to the question read, quote, "All Telegram chats and group chats are private amongst their participants. We do not process any requests related to them." That has already changed. So now the verbiage on is all Telegram apps have report buttons that let you flag illegal content for our moderators in just a few taps. And then they give you the instructions on how to fill out the report and go there. So Telegram is changing its moderating practices. It's going to be much easier to report illegal stuff. They are going to be much more friendly to law enforcement. I think mostly this is good. Mostly this is about crime. Mostly this is about really objectively bad stuff. I don't think that the Telegram case was ever really about free speech. It was about whether you can use this platform to engage in illegal activities without being caught. And I think that some of that, at least, looks like Telegram is going to block. Now, we'll see whether that sticks, whether that's sustainable, how long it lasts. We'll see exactly what happens. But the issues with Telegram are progressing. All right, let's see. What do we want to do here? I'm going to skip that. Okay, two last stories. Starlink and Waymo. Starlink. Starlink has now, basically Starlink now controls 2/3 of all satellites in the sky. 2/3, 66% of all satellites in the global sky are controlled by Elon Musk. People are flipping out over this. Brazilians, who of course have banned X, banned Twitter in Brazil, they are concerned that one person could make the decision to take down servers for hundreds of thousands of people. I wonder if they're concerned about a Brazilian judge who can take down servers for tens of millions of people. But yeah, they're talking about Starlink, so they're worried about Starlink. Bureaucrats all over the world supposedly are now worried about, hey, Elon has a monopoly over space satellites, over space satellites that provide internet. Now, of course, there's terrestrial competition, but this is they think it's kind of spooky, and it's a little out of their control. Although the Brazilians did force Starlink to cut subscribers from X, to ban X on their platform. So they seem to have some control over it. But this is great. You got to love this. And again, I have a love-hate relationship with Musk, obviously. Half the time he does great things, half the time he does bad things. But, it's exciting to see how successful this venture has been. I don't know if it makes any money, but it's been an incredibly successful venture. There are thousands of satellites now up, Starlink satellites up in the sky. Again, 2/3 of all the satellites Elon Musk owns. That's amazing. Not Elon Musk, SpaceX. That's amazing and inspiring and scary to the bad guys, scary to the bureaucrats, scary to people who want to have control of our lives, and suddenly they don't have the control. Elon Musk has control. What's up with that? They're unhappy about that. All right. Finally, yesterday we talked about driverless trucks, right? We talked about the driverless trucks in Texas. And today, the same website, this is Understanding AI, which is a Substack, has a report on driverless taxis and how they are doing. This is, if you remember, Waymo was running an experiment primarily in San Francisco. It turns out they've also been running an experiment in Phoenix. So both in Phoenix and San Francisco, you can get into a driverless taxi. No human being running the taxi. We now have some data. We now have some data about the safety of these driverless taxis. So here's some information, right? Since Waymo started in San Francisco and Phoenix, it has had 20 crashes with injuries, right? That's through June, so it's not up to date today, but it's through June. 20 crashes with injuries. Now that sounds like a lot, 20. But when you take into account that Waymo driverless cars have traveled more than 22 million miles, it's not a lot. Not a lot. Waymo taxis have been involved in fewer than one injury-causing crash for every million miles of driving. Now that is much, much better than typical human driver. We'll get to those stats in a minute, but even those crashes, even the 20 crashes with injuries, many of them were not caused by Waymo, even though they have to report it. So for example, I'll give you an example. On Friday evening last November, police chased a silver sedan across San Francisco Bay Bridge. I'm reading from this article. The fleeing vehicle entered San Francisco and went careening through the city's crowded streets. At the intersection of 11th and Folsom, it sideswiped the front of two other vehicles, veered into the sidewalk, hit two pedestrians, right? So this car, driven by a human being, running away from the police, hit two pedestrians. It appears that both pedestrians were taken to the hospital. One of them suffered major injuries. The driver of the silver sedan was injured, as was a passenger in one of the other vehicles. So 4 people overall were injured. Now, the third car that was hit was a Waymo robotaxi. Nobody in that car was injured. And yet, Waymo was required to report the crash to the government agencies, to the database. So one of the 20 crashes, for example, that its cars were involved in was a crash that it had no way of evading. Some speeding, careening, crazy guy crashed into a Waymo car, caused injuries, but those injuries accounted against Waymo. So even the 20 is an exaggeration. But here's some of the stats based on, given that we know that. Waymo estimates, this is, again, I'm quoting from the article, Waymo estimates the typical drivers in San Francisco and Phoenix would have caused 64 crashes over those 22 million miles. So Waymo vehicles get into injury-causing crashes less than 1/3 as often per mile as human-driven vehicles. And this is by the most general definition of injury-causing accident possible. Now, if you look at crashes that trigger an airbag, so not injury necessarily, trigger an airbag, driverless Waymo cars have experienced just 5 crashes where an airbag was deployed. A typical human driver in Phoenix and San Francisco would have experienced 31 crashes over 22 million miles. Waymo is 1/6 as likely as human drivers to experience this type of crash. Waymo is expanding dramatically. About a year ago, Waymo provided 10,000 rides per week. Right now, or last month, it was providing 100,000 rides per week. And growth is going to be dramatic over the next period. Again, even if you look at the crashes that Waymo was involved in, 16 involved a human driver rear-ending a Waymo car. And I think pretty much everybody recognizes that whoever hits you in the back, they're responsible. So, and yet Waymo had to report those crashes. So you take the 20 and you subtract 16, that's already 4, and then you had this car that careened into a Waymo car that had nothing to do with Waymo, that's another one, that's only 3. You can see that if you start really looking at these crashes, maybe there weren't any. Indeed, 3 of the crashes was a human-driven car running a red light, crashing into a Waymo, and it couldn't get out of the way fast enough. It could very well be that the number for Waymo is 0. 0. Now that's unbelievable, and it's a real revolution. And if all cars are driverless cars, and they are communicating with one another, or even if they're not driverless cars, but cars start communicating with one another so that they can anticipate where another car is going to be, you can imagine this becoming not only safer, but faster, more efficient, more productive. It changes the way we move around completely. I mean, I'm not sure that in the future we will own cars. It might very well be that we will be hailing driverless vehicles to pick us up and take us to a place. We don't have to own the driverless vehicle if there are enough of them on the road. We don't have to have garages. We don't have to maintain cars. Those will all be maintained by the people who own the driving service. Having a chauffeur, basically. If regulators allow this, and if, not in my backyard types allow this to happen, we could be on a real revolution in transportation, which will change a lot of people's lives. Imagine those commutes, those long traffic, intense commutes out there. Imagine dealing with them in a driverless car. They will be a lot more efficient because driverless cars, again, can be a lot more efficient. They don't, for example, slow down to look at the accident on the other side of the highway that has no relevance to your own life. The number of times that you get stuck in a traffic jam, and you could be stuck in a traffic jam for an hour, and then you finally get to the source of it, and the source of it is an accident on the other side of the highway, and it was all caused by the fact that a few drivers slowed down to look, and that created this cascading effect. Driverless cars don't slow down to take a look. So we could be on the real verge of a revolution when it comes to transportation, which I think is super exciting. All right. All right. We can end there. I'll keep that story for tomorrow. And we'll move your super chats to center stage here. All right, so guys, you need to ask more questions. And those of you who are watching live, please consider supporting the show, doing super chats or doing stickers. Let me thank the sticker people. There's some people who gave stickers. Mary Aline, thank you. She started us off. And thank you to Stephen Harper. Thanks, guys. Really, really appreciate the stickers. All of you could be doing stickers, value for value. You're obviously listening. You get something out of the show. Please consider repaying that value with a small contribution on a sticker. It could be $2, could be $50, $100. Also remind you that those of you who are not listening live can support the show through a monthly contribution. You can also, by the way, on YouTube, do an applause. and that'll allow you to do a sticker in a sense in YouTube. But even better is a monthly contribution on PayPal through yaronbrookshow.com/membership, or on Patreon. Just put Yaron Brook Show in Patreon, and supporting the show that way monthly is a massive value to me, to the show, to its future, to making this kind of a permanent part of American culture, right? Your culture. I don't know about America, but your culture. And if you're interested in sponsoring a show, if you want to take a topic and have me cover it, it's $1,000 to sponsor a show. If you're interested in sponsoring kind of monthly the program, you can do that with just let me know that you would like me to sponsor the show. We can do that. We can do a product sponsorship. We'll get to our product sponsors in a minute. So that is all available. All right, let me get to our sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor of the show. And here I want to remind everybody, I've been talking about this a lot recently, but not a lot of people signed up. So I'm hoping we get more signups. And that is to this conference the Ayn Rand Institute is holding in Brisbane, Australia in December. For all of you Australians who've been saying, Yaron, you need to come to Australia, give talks, or the Ayn Rand Institute should have a program in Australia. We need to do more in Australia. Well, we're coming. And now you need to sign up. You need to register. You need to go out there and make it happen. Help us make it happen. So please register. It's aynrand.org/start here. You'll get information. The other thing is we're not getting a lot of scholarship applications, right? I mean, institutes willing to pay you to go to this conference, pay you to go to the conference. Now, not from America. It doesn't make any sense. You can apply for a scholarship to go to the conference in Austin if you live in America. But if you live in Asia, or if you live in Australia, or if you live in any place in Asia, and you'd like to go to the conference, and you can't afford it, the Institute will give you a scholarship. Now, it might not pay every last dime of your travel expenses, but it'll, A, get you into the conference for free, and will pay for some travel. So please consider applying for a scholarship. Whether you live in Australia or New Zealand or anywhere nearby, Philippines, India, as far as India, China, Mongolia. I know there are listeners from Mongolia. We have listeners in South Korea, and we have, I wish in North Korea, but South Korea and in Japan and Taiwan. So all these places, you know, it's going to be a really fun weekend. 6th to the 8th of December. I will be there. Nikos, great speaker, fun guy. He'll be there. You should all come. Again, if you can't afford it, there are scholarships. So apply for a scholarship. aynrand.org/start here. Finally, well, not finally, but John Bobbin is a sponsor. Phi Life, PHI, beginning of philosophy. Life, LIFE, one word. Phi Life is a channel on YouTube. The link is below. John provides a lot of guidance, a lot of advice, a lot of integration on issues relating to life extension, to health, to working out, exercise, diet, nutrition, things like that. He integrates a lot of the information provided by a lot of other people out there in the world, and brings kind of a rational, sane voice to this issue where most of us are kind of flooded with information, and it's hard to tell what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. I'll probably have John on for a members-only show, interview show, where we'll talk about some of these issues. Should be fun, and I'll probably have him on in October, next month. Finally, Alex Epstein, Energy Talking Points, the #1 world expert on energy, fossil fuels, environmentalism, climate change, and just a rational approach to all of those. Rational, this worldly, focused on human flourishing approach to all those issues. You can get talking points on the issues of the day. You can get essays on kind of the big picture, and you can get an Alex AI where you can actually ask the AI questions, an AI trained on Alex's writings and speaking and his views, so you get a rational perspective. All right, what have I missed? I think I've covered it all. We got the sponsorships down. Mary Aline, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, let me just say again that we need, yeah, we're kind of behind on the super chats. So I know I missed some yesterday, and I'm gonna do them today. So no super chats are lost completely. I'll provide answers to all of them. But today seems really thin, much thinner. Yeah, really thin. So please consider doing some super chats, asking questions. We've got plenty of time to answer those questions. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of that. All right, Remo. This is from yesterday. Remo asked, do you know some interesting tourist recommendations in California for people interested in tech business? Like taking a ride in a driverless Waymo cab, for example. Huh. I don't. Not something the equivalent of taking a ride in a Waymo cab, which I would do. I think that would be fun to do in San Francisco. But what else? I mean, I'm sure there's a tech museum. There's a really fun museum in San Francisco. God, what is that place called? That palace thing. I forget the name of it. Check Tech Museum in San Francisco. There's a really good tech museum in San Francisco. But no, I really don't know tourist attractions focused on tech and business. I don't think Apple gives tours at the Apple campus. I'm trying to think of, you could drive by the Twitter building in San Francisco, but I'm not sure you'd get much out of it. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I don't really have a lot to add. San Francisco has a great art museum. What's it called? It's in the park. It's in Golden Gate Park. It's the art museum in Golden Gate Park. Spectacular. Some of the best views in the world. In the world. Oh, that's right. Ian says there's a computer history museum. Computer history museum in San Francisco. That would be fun. Yep. I think I've been there. The Palace of Fine Arts. Thank you, Ian. Palace of Fine Arts is a fantastic art museum. Has some beautiful, beautiful paintings. It has at least one Bouguereau, but it has some other beautiful stuff. And again, it has some of the best views in the world. Wait a minute. No. The Palace of Fine Arts is where the Tech Museum, I think, is. The other one is, somebody wrote it here. Where did they write it? The museum in the park is De Young. Is that right? The De Young Museum? The De Young Museum. Anyway, it's in Golden State Park Art Museum. And Golden State Park has a number of museums that are all really good, and Golden State Park is really nice. Ian says, we did a tour of Palace of Fine Arts with a bunch of local objectivists. Okay. All right, let's take Thomas's question. What about a magazine like Playboy that did interviews with an extremely wide range of people and views? They interviewed Nazis, communists, Ayn Rand, Southern racists, abstract artists, politicians of many stripes. God. I didn't know Playboy did interviews with Nazis. I find that bizarre. I find it bizarre that they did them, and I find it bizarre that people tolerated it. So I don't know firsthand that Playboy actually did interviews with Nazis. Communists, for a variety of reasons, are just more accepted in the culture. I think that's sad about the culture, but they are. But for Playboy to do an interview with a Nazi that's serious, yeah, yes, I would say that it would disqualify that magazine. It would take it, you know, I would cancel my subscription immediately. So I think Nazis and certainly real communists, you know, people who apologists for Stalin and Pol Pot, and this is why I won't speak with Noam Chomsky, because he's an apologist for Pol Pot. People like that, I don't see how you can tolerate, right? So, yeah, I'd be curious if there's really an interview with a Nazi in Playboy. Ori says, according to Pew, the percent of Americans who identify as Christians has. Let me say one other thing. One second. Let me stop there. Let me say one other thing. Here's another difference between Tucker interviewing a Nazi and with no pushback, or a Nazi apologist, and Playboy. Playboy interviews a Nazi. Nobody thinks, well, Playboy's Nazi. It's clear that Playboy's interviewing for whatever reason. It's not clear to me why they would interview him, but for whatever reason they're interviewing. But it's not a reflection on them in terms of their views. Tucker interviewing a Nazi apologist is absolutely a reflection on his views, because we know his views are very close to that already, if they're not there yet. We know he has a history with these kind of ideas and dabbling in them. So him interviewing a Nazi apologist makes it seem like, yeah, he's one too. He's one too. So I do think it's more problematic for somebody like Tucker to do it. And it's incumbent, therefore, on somebody like Tucker to push back against, if he is doing the interview, to push back against the person in order to clarify that he doesn't agree with them. But in this case, it's not clear that he doesn't agree with them. And it's not clear that he wants to take a stand. He likes the ambiguity. He thrives on the ambiguity. There's no ambiguity with regard to Playboy. Playboy was not. Right, so there's a bunch of confusion about the museum in San Francisco. There's the Legion of Honor Museum, there's the Palace of Fine Arts, and there's the Young Museum, and I don't know which is which. So look them up online. But there's a great museum at the edge of Golden Gate Park with a magnificent view that has fantastic sculptures and paintings. And I think that's the Legion of Honor. I think that's what it is. All right, going back to Oli. According to Pew, the percentage of Americans who identify as Christian has dramatically fallen in the 21st century, while percent of atheists has risen. Do you think Christianity is getting politically influenced despite declining culturally? Well, I mean, this is a complicated equation, right? I think that it's gaining influence among intellectuals. It's gaining influence among the people who shape the culture of the future. So 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, suddenly 60 years ago, suddenly in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the intellectual high ground was dominated by atheists, by leftists. I mean, there were a few conservatives intellectuals. They weren't that significant. Over the last, and so you could say that the consequence of that is that the generations that followed them see a slow decline in the amount of people who affiliate themselves with Christianity because the intellectuals shape the culture of the future. But what you're seeing today is more and more public figures, more and more intellectuals, more and more former atheists, self-identifying as Christian, giving Christianity a huge boost, celebrating Christianity. I mean, this book, Dominion, I think has played a big role in claiming that Christianity is Western civilization. That's what it is. It's responsible for Western civilization. More and more people are buying into that. Now, it's still true that the left, therefore atheists, kind of dominate the intellectual landscape, but more and more, there are more and more intellectuals of the right. There are the integralists, the national conservatives, the now Christian conservatives. There's the Ayn Rand who used to be atheists and now not. And then there are the influencers like Tucker Carlson and all these others. And that increase among the influences of Christianity will, I think, have consequences in the next few generations in terms of rising religion. So right now, yes, the trends seem to be towards more secularization. I'm not sure if those trends will hold. Those trends could easily reverse. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're reversing as we speak, right? Because the survey is always lagging. So they could already be reversing. It wouldn't surprise me at all. The second point I think it's important to make is that Christianity is incredibly influential in the culture, even if people stop believing in Christianity. Because the secularists are not challenging the fundamental beliefs of Christianity, at least not when it comes to morality, which I think is the most important realm. So, for example, and epistemology, right? Morality and epistemology, the two most important realms. So, morality, they adopt Christian altruism completely, thoroughly, self-sacrifice, the idea of the nobility and the virtue of self-sacrifice. In epistemology, the idea of emotions and mysticism of one form or another, and if not explicitly mysticism, then emotions, as guiding one to truth. So even when Christianity is in decline in terms of the number of people saying they're Christian, I believe emotionalism is on the rise, mysticism is on the rise, and altruism is, I don't know if on the rise, but is not declining. And therefore you could say that Christianity's impact on the culture is not changing that much. But I also believe that you will start seeing an increase in people saying they're affiliated with Christianity. Maybe not now, maybe in 5 years, but it's coming. Thank you, Ori. Ian, it's the first question to Trump. If the first question to Trump isn't about January 6th, the moderators are not doing their jobs. Vance repeated on the All In podcast that he wouldn't have certified the election. I saw that. So Vance, I've said for a long time, is a creep. He's a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous person. And he basically said that he would have not certified the election. He would have not done what Pence did. He would have done the opposite, which is unconstitutional, an act of treason. And he kind of couched it in, I would have gone back to the states and had them certify new electorates and re-examine, Basically, he wouldn't have certified the election. And that should be enough to disqualify him from running for VP. So I agree with you, Ian, that they should ask immediately about January 6th, and they should ask him whether he will, if he loses, whether he will accept defeat, whether he will call on his followers to accept defeat, whether he will call on them to commit acts of violence. They should confront maybe the number one issue with Trump head on, right off the bat. And they should do it right at the beginning. I agree completely. I mean, it's treasonous in the sense that they swear an oath to the Constitution. And as soon as a vice president refused to certify an election, he is violating his sworn duty to the Constitution. And in that sense, it's treasonous. Shazbat, please don't ban the viewer known as Gibberish. I mean, just the name is grounds to be banned, no? He has delightfully bizarre things to say about every topic imaginable. Okay. Yeah, cool. Yes, I see he means you, gibberish. Not gibberish, it's gnubberish. Yeah, I don't know who this guy is, but okay, cool. Shazbat says you're okay. I'm okay with Shazbat. I should just make Shazbat moderator. Robert says, those who are convinced that woke and Antifa and immigration and multiculturalism are worse than the Third Reich are beyond reason and beneath contempt. Yes, and the reality is, more than that, the reality is that we don't have. I mean, woke is in decline. Antifa is still, even at its peak, was pretty marginal. Multiculturalism is, okay. It's bad, but it's not that bad. I mean, it's just absurd that they would choose the Third Reich. I mean, this is the historian that, the so-called historian, this Cooper guy, literally had this on Twitter where he said, I would rather Hitler winning the war and dominating Europe is a better outcome than what we have in Europe today. I mean, it's just incomprehensible. I'm in Europe today. It's pretty cool here. People, living their lives pretty happy, pretty free. Nobody's afraid of being suddenly arrested by the secret police. They're not rounding up Jews here. There are no concentration camps in Spain or France or Germany or anywhere. Yeah, they're bad guys in Europe right now. There's some really bad immigrants, and somebody should do something about it, absolutely. But really, Third Reich, that's your answer to the challenge of leftism in Europe today? God, I mean, this is from one insanity to another insanity, to a greater insanity. So you go from something bad to something really horrific. Imagine how much innovation and entrepreneurship there would be in the Third Reich, a Third Reich Europe. We just talked about this Draghi report of the lack of competitiveness in Europe. Imagine how poor Europe would be today if it was run by Hitler. I mean, the reality is that Spain, which was run by Franco, who was a lot less of a total, psychopathic thug than Hitler, but it still was bad, but nowhere near as bad as Hitler. Spain was worse than stagnated. It was poor during the period of Franco. And indeed, it's only in the post-Franco era that Spain's standard of living, quality of life, wealth, and everything started going up. Same with Portugal under military dictatorship and so on. They've all done much, much better being free, even though, while free, they're being dominated somewhat by the left. I mean, God, the modern left is so much better than right-wing dictatorship. Even non-Nazi right-wing dictatorship, never mind how bad right-wing Nazi dictatorship is. It is the most destructive thing to the human spirit possible. But they prefer that to, was the other picture that the guy ran? He ran the picture of a trans in the Paris opening ceremony versus a picture of Hitler in front of the Eiffel Tower, and he said, of these two Frances, I prefer the one with Hitler. Really? I mean, the Olympics were great. So they had a trans thing, and maybe they made fun of Christianity. It's not even clear. Maybe they made fun of Christianity. Good. Christianity deserves to be made fun of. It deserves a lot worse than that. But at the very least, it should be made fun of. Maybe we should ban, what do you call the British comedy group that made fun of Jesus? Maybe we should ban Monty Python, right? Monty Python is a song. We'd rather have Hitler than Monty Python because they made fun of Christianity. And this is the thing. People find this appealing. People on Twitter find this appealing. They like this stuff. They think it's funny or true or right or good. They're so blinded by irrationality and hate that they can't even see the consequences of their ideas. All right, Hookham says, off topic, common rebuttal to Hamas using human shields is if a person you loved was held hostage, a gun pointed at their head, would you accept police officers shooting and killing both the criminal and the person you loved? Yes, particularly if the person was not just holding the gun to the person I loved, but was using that gun to shoot bystanders who were all around him. And he also had a gun on the person you loved. right? So, but he's using that gun to shoot people all around. And he's going to keep doing that, no matter what you do. That is, even if you can release the person you love through a negotiation, he's going to keep the gun and keep shooting people. Then what choice do you have? Now, I understand the families. I understand the people directly engaged in this, but as a political leader or the police, you have to take him out. You have to take him out, and you have to take him out as fast as possible. Or imagine, well, anyway, you know, he's got a suicide belt and he's going to kill 1,000 people. You shoot to kill. And if some of the people die in the meantime, that's on him. On him. Okay, Soupy Cask says they were drag queens, not trans. Very different. Yeah, I mean, less bad, I think. I mean, the right is, everybody's made such a big deal about drag queens, but drag is something people do for fun, have been doing for fun for a long time. It's kind of a thing you do in the army. There was an episode of MASH where they dress up as women and perform. This is in the 1970s. Big deal. What's the big deal about drag queens? So that's even worse in some sense. All right. And can religious people be for freedom? Well, I mean, they can be for some freedom, and they can, I mean, specific individual religious people can be for freedom. When the rubber hits the road, are they going to be consistent about it? Fewer of them. What do we mean by religious people? How religious are they? The more religious they are, the less inclined towards freedom they will be. You know, what do we mean by religious? Following the dogma, just believing there's a God. And then what do we mean by freedom? Do we mean advocates of complete laissez-faire capitalism and a proper role for government? I know some religious people who hold that, but it's rare. It's ultimately unusual, but they can be. I don't think their argument is logically consistent. So I don't think ultimately they can convince a culture and hold on to it. What usually happens is if they establish a free country like America was established, it then slips into less freedom because the contradictions become surface, they become real. Shazbot, quote, "You are the Messiah, and I should know. I followed a few." Random follower in the life of the Messiah, life of Brian. "You're the Messiah, and I should know. I followed a few." Yes, and that is actually historically correct. That is, during the time of Jesus, first of all, Jesus never, I don't think, ever really called himself the Messiah. Jesus was a cult leader, and he was one among many. At that point in time, the Jewish religion was going through a lot of angst, a lot of existential soul-searching, a lot of splintering. Conflict with the Romans was generating this, and that generated a lot of different cults, a lot of different subdivisions, like the evangelicals, a lot of different subdivisions within the Jewish faith. Jesus was one among many cult leaders at the time. And you could imagine somebody saying, "Oh, we've got a new cult leader. I followed a few. This guy's for real. This is the real guy." That completely makes sense. So, thanks, Shazbot. Lyron, thank you for the sticker. I think I saw one other one. No, that's it. Okay, I think Mary Eileen did another one. Thank you, Mary Eileen. Let's see, Black Cat. This is still from yesterday. I highly recommend Tucker's documentary about masculine right-wing testicle tanning and raw egg eating. Just the documentary I wanted to see. I've been curious about right-wing testicle tanning, masculine right-wing testicle tanning, and raw egg eating. Thank you, Black Cat. All right, Nevfell. When I try to watch politicians, I feel like I'm going to get a stomach cramp. Any tips? Yeah, don't watch politicians. Watching politicians never does you any good. At best, read politicians, but try to minimize your interactions with politicians generally in life as much as you can. Because they're creepy, they're liars, they are unpleasant people in every respect. Michael says, it may be true that you can't fool all the people all the time, but you can't fool enough of them to rule a large country. Yes, you can. Absolutely. Absolutely, you can. Where is Michael? Usually he asks 55 questions. Today he asked one and then disappeared. Don't know where he is. Ginger, did you read the article in the Free Press written by General H.R. McMaster? The danger of the U.S. appeasing plus the president's senility has put us into extreme danger. Opinion. Yeah, no, absolutely. Having a senile president at any time is bad. What the United States did in Afghanistan, although I place a lot of the blame for that on Trump, but certainly what Biden did was awful enough. And then U.S. appeasing more broadly, appeasing Hamas. I think to some extent appeasing the Russians by not allowing the Ukrainians to use American weapons the way they were designed. I think all of that places the United States and the world really at extreme danger because all that it does is embolden the bad guys. It makes the bad guys think, well, America's not going to do anything about this. America's got weak leadership. America, is just going to fold. And it makes them bolder and bolder and bolder, and they push and they push and they push. And that could create situations that could result in even worse wars than we have right now. So I agree with McMaster generally. I also agree with McMaster's assessment of Trump. And McMaster generally is a pretty smart guy. I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he's right on this. Wesley, I constantly hear Trump is undermining his own campaign, but he's doing better than he was under Biden or Clinton. He's doing something right. I don't know that he's doing something right. I think the main thing that is holding Trump up is the incompetence of the left. The main thing people are responding to is that is the incompetence of Biden and the left-wing nuttiness of Kamala. This is a referendum on Biden, and Trump is benefiting from the fact that people dislike Biden. You can see that in the fact that when he dropped out, Kamala immediately was doing much better. That is, people really dislike Biden to the extent that Kamala carries with her their attitude towards Biden. That is what is holding her back. She's not a particularly good candidate. She's not a particularly centrist candidate, which is what the Democrats need. And then Trump has a solid support among Republicans. And it's shocking. It's shocking, but reality and truth. Republicans love Donald Trump. And even those who tell you they don't like Donald, they just vote for him because what's the alternative? Most of those people secretly love Donald Trump. And I don't think it's a matter of him. I mean, he's doing something right in appealing to their irrationality, to their conspiracy theories, to their craziness, to their insanity. And that's what you need to do in order to rally the Republican Party these days. Paul, what are the insurance liabilities of driverless cars? I mean, I'm sure they're pretty high. That is, I'm sure they're the same liabilities as you would, the cars have to be insured. My guess is they carry the same kind of liability insurance that the driver cars have. It's just that the company would pay it. The company probably has some kind of umbrella insurance policy on all its cars, and it probably has better coverage than individuals do. Luckily for them, they never use it, so insurance companies probably make a lot of money off of them. Hunter says, hat tip to the 1 millimeter, 1 gram full NTS who cut my grass, to the immigrants. Immigrants. Why can't you just write immigrants? Will YouTube not allow the word immigrants? Hat tip to the immigrants who cut my grass. 5-6 guys cut, edge, bag, and pull weed in 10 minutes for a very fair price. YouTube blocked the word. Unbelievable that YouTube would block immigrants. What a culture we live in. Yeah, immigrants are great. Hat tip to the, 15 illegal immigrants that are in the United States who are working. Good for them. I mean, the real crazy part of the whole immigration issue is that we don't let them work. If they work, they become productive members of society. They contribute. They contribute through work, and they send the kids to school, and they become Americans, and they live the American dream, and that's fantastic. Good for them. The problem is when we don't let them work, or you only allow them to work in some underground economy where their upside is limited and where their children never become American citizens. So the solution is legalization. And yes, I would give them all amnesty. I would grant them all amnesty and legalize them all. I mean, except the criminals. What's his name? Reagan did it, and I think it was fantastic. And those immigrants and their kids and their grandkids have become American citizens. They become American. They've assimilated. So the way to assimilation is through work and through legal work. All right. This is, by the way, the last question. So if you want to ask a question, you've got like 1 minute to do so, because otherwise the show ends. If you want to support the show, you want to do a sticker, you want to do a last minute question, a last minute sticker to support the show, any of that, please jump in and do it now before we wrap it all up, because we're about to do that. Ginger says, Playboy interviewed George Lincoln Rockkwell. I guess he's some kind of Nazi, but has a subtitle that says, a candid conversation with a fanatical Führer of the American Nazi Party. Yeah, and I think it's clear. I mean, I wouldn't have done the interview. If I owned Playboy, if I ran Playboy, I wouldn't have done the interview. I wouldn't have interviewed a Nazi. I don't think there's any value to be achieved by interviewing a Nazi. And you legitimize them by putting them on the pages of your magazine. You legitimize them. So I would not have done it. But at least Playboy makes it clear that they don't agree with him. And they think he's fanatical. And they think Nazism is bad. Tucker did not do that. He did not do that. I wouldn't have the same attitude towards Tucker if he'd said, look, I'd pretty much interview anybody. I think Nazism is despicable. This guy's a Nazi apologist. But, let's hear what he has to say. And then he pushed back on him and asked him tough questions. Then I would have said, I hate this. I don't think he should have done it. It's stupid to interview anybody. But at least he wouldn't have basically supported this guy, plus calling him one of the great historians of our time. Something like that, right? All right. Cool. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to all the super chatters. Really appreciate it. I will see you all. Don't forget, those of you who are not watching live, or those who didn't participate in the super chat or did a sticker, please consider becoming a monthly contributor, Patreon. If you've been thinking of doing Patreon or becoming a supporter of the show, just do it now. Go to Patreon website and just do it. Fill in the thing. It takes a few minutes and you're done. Or go to PayPal, yaronbrookshow.com/membership, and you can do it through PayPal. Either way works. But just get it done and you become a supporter, and it's automatic every month and you don't have to think about it again. And you become a trader. You become a trader with me. And I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. See you all tomorrow.